Good morning, everyone. I call this special council meeting Monday, May the 27th, 2024, 9 a.m. to order and to acknowledge we are on the traditional territory of the Staheles. The next order of business, please.
The next order of business is introduction of late items.
Don't have any. Councillor Facio.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Just like to ask for a resolution to go following this special council meeting, go into a closed under 91A personnel to deal with a personnel issue.
Do I have a seconder for that? Sorry, seconded by Councillor Jackson. So just to the corporate officer, does that require two resolutions now? One, two, or just one?
Thank you. If you would like to add closed session to the agenda, we could do that during approval of the agenda. So it would be approving the agenda as amended to go into a closed session, probably after questions from the public and prior to adjournment.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, on a point of order,
Councillor.
this sounds to me like another surprise item on the agenda, and I continue to be resentful of being ambushed by such things. If this is a special meeting of council, which I believe it probably is, then it requires proper notice, and proper notice has not been given. I think proper notice allows us to have 24 hours notification of a special meeting, and special meetings are at the call of the mayor, not necessarily the council. So I will not be supporting another surprise meeting after this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just to the corporate officer again. So the council procedural bylaw for the addition of, is this considered new business? Go ahead.
Thank you. It kind of depends on your interpretation of council procedure bylaw. It's not very clear about closed sessions. For example, in other municipalities, going into a closed session is part of a regular order of business, but that is laid out in their council procedure bylaw. There is a section of the community charter 90 sub 1 sub N that can be used to go into a closed session when you need to discuss what the closed session will be about. So you could use that if you were speaking at a council meeting about something and it was determined that it needed to be going into a closed meeting. So it isn't very clear in our council procedure bylaw. If council agrees to add it as new business, that can be done. If council feels that it's considered a special council meeting, it would either have to have adequate notice, or notice would have to be waived by unanimous vote of council.
Okay, thank you. Just to further on that, so under our council procedural bylaw, under section 4D, can the corporate officer please read that one out?
4D of council procedure bylaw, a member of council may request that an item be added as new business to the agenda of a regular meeting of council in that meeting, providing council approves the new business by resolution.
Okay, so again, I'm just going to ask for clarification to the corporate officer. So it says that a member of council may request that an item, which is what this is, be added as new business to the agenda of a regular meeting of council. Well, this is not a regular meeting of council. This is a special meeting of council. So would that not, in the chair's opinion, that would require that council would have to waive, following the council procedural bylaw, which, if the corporate officer could help me find that, please.
That would be suspend the rules. So that's section 23. Any provision of this bylaw except those required by the Community Charter or the Local Government Act may be temporarily suspended for a single meeting by a motion passed by 2/3 vote of council members present.
So my interpretation of it then is that this vote would require 2/3 vote. Is that correct?
To add new business, to a regular or to a special meeting, sorry?
Correct. So we're asking for a suspension of the rules because this is not a regular meeting of council. This is a special meeting of council, which has been called by the mayor.
Sorry,
So under section 23 of the council procedural bylaw, the article you just read out, that we can waive this, but we can temporarily suspend it for the single meeting, but it requires a motion passed by 2/3 vote of all council members present. Is that correct?
that's what it says. If you go to section 15, which is the regular order of business for a special council meeting, introduction of late items is permitted in that section. However, you'll see further along in the agenda that there is no new business technically in a special meeting of council. So at the beginning of section 15, it also states that except as council otherwise resolves and in any event only to the extent that business exists. So a special meeting of council, because it says except as council otherwise resolves, it doesn't have to strictly follow this exact order of events, which you'll see this agenda doesn't. So it depends on how you interpret the council procedure bylaw. Unfortunately, the wording isn't clear and there isn't a section that deals specifically with closed sessions.
Okay. So my ruling is that as per, it is new business that is, sorry here. Again, I'll read it out, that a member of council may request that an item be added to the agenda of regular meeting of council in that meeting. This is not a regular meeting of council, so if council wishes to add it, then I'm going to refer to section 23A. So that any provision of this bylaw, except those required by the Community Charter or the Local Government Act, or any other applicable legislation may be temporarily suspended for a single meeting by a motion passed by 2/3 vote of all council members present. So we've already got it, it's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on that? Councillor Allen and then Councillor Jackson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for those explanations and to the corporate officer. It still leaves the question about the meeting which has been proposed to follow this meeting. And that is clearly an unscheduled meeting, and therefore it becomes a special meeting. And all special meetings of council are at the call of the chair, which is yourself, and require that councillors be given a 24-hour notice of the meeting, along with an explanation of what is proposed to be discussed. None of that has happened at this point. And while Councillor Fasu and Jackson may be able to get a 2/3 vote for something to be discussed at this meeting, which is what the procedural bylaw says, that does not include a discussion of the item that he has raised at the special meeting, which he wants to have following this meeting. Again, I protest being ambushed by these late items. All members of council deserve to have adequate notice and proper notice of what is being proposed to be discussed in order that they have time to research and consider the matter before the meeting. And if there's no urgency, which I don't believe there is no good reason to hold a special meeting tomorrow. If you wish to call a special meeting at the request of one of the councillors, you are free to do so, but the councillors themselves do not have the ability to call that meeting unless you fail to call the special meeting within, I think, 5 days. So by all means, put something on the agenda if it's urgent that needs to be dealt with today. But the issue that Councillor Facio has raised is not suitable for a public meeting discussion. And if it has to go to a special meeting, it'll be your call as mayor to call that. Thank you.
Councillor Jackson.
Your worship, you know, the reason for this is we have a situation here that must be dealt with. It should have been dealt with last week, not waiting now. This is not a special council. This is a regular council meeting because you discontinued the last council meeting. These are semantics of what you're talking about. This is costing this taxpayers a lot of money by not dealing with this issue. And it's going on and on, and it must stop. You've got to start thinking about the whole of the company. Mr. Allen's against everything anyway, so that's just one thing the way he is. This has to be dealt with today. Thank you.
Councillor Facio.
Just to follow on Councillor Jackson's comments, that it's to do with a personnel matter regarding our CAO. And I think that's something that's under section 151, yourself as mayor should have brought to the attention of the council at the next meeting per the charter. So that's basically what the discussion is going to be about.
Councillor Vidal.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Facio was
No
out of
point of
order
order here
identifying
anymore.
the individual to be discussed. He has breached the confidentiality rules by doing so. Thank you.
Order, please. Order, please. Order, please. So the motion is on the table is the suspension of the rules. So the motion is any provision of this bylaw except those required by the Community Charter or the Local Government Act or any other applicable legislation may temporarily be suspended for a single meeting by a motion passed by 2/3 vote of all council members present. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? So it's a 3-2 vote. What's required for 2/3 vote? To the corporate officer, please.
2/3 requires at least 4 council members to be in favor.
Motion fails. Next order of business, please.
The next order of business is approval of the agenda.
Do I have a mover? Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded Jackson, sorry. Seconded by Councillor Vidal. Any other discussion on that? Ready to call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next order of business, please.
The next order of business is new business. Item A, state of local emergency.
Thank you. I'm just going to give the floor to our Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. The new business on the floor here is to deal with the state of local emergency that was declared last week. Between the time when the state of local emergency was declared and when it was canceled, there were 2 agreements that were entered into. And today it will be at council's wish to either endorse those agreements or not. The first agreement was a forest fuel prescription creation for $10,500, and that's to create a forest fuel prescription between or on McCombs Drive from McPherson to Cottonwood. Excuse me. The second agreement was for the procurement of SenseNet Fireword Safety Suite. So basically that is a fire detection system that consists of 100 sensors, 5 gateways, 3 cameras at a total price of $174,500, and with a annual a monitoring cost starting at 2025 of $50,000. If council wishes to endorse these contracts, we may proceed. Otherwise, there are several other options that you'll see as part of this report of different types of systems you can go with. So for example, option one would be the SenseNet system at 65 sensors, 4 gateways, 3 cameras at a cost of $150,000. Now that includes installation, which is estimated to be 20 to 30,000. Option two would be the agreement that we just talked about. So it'd be 100 sensors, 5 gateways, 3 cameras at a cost of up to $205,000. Or option three would be 100 sensors, 5 gateways, and 5 cameras at a cost of $235,000, including installation. An additional option may be that council would direct staff to work with BC Wildfire Services to explore early wildfire detection system on a more regional level. Also, this is more of a budget thing for next year, but it should be known that any of the options for this system would be about a 2% property tax increase for the annual monitoring service. I think we'll let this council discuss that now, and we can be available for any questions you have.
Councillor, just 1 second, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make a motion that the council approve the agreements entered into by the mayor and the fire chief for the SenseNet program and for the forest treatment prescriptions, which are necessary to protect this village in the year 2024. That's my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? I'll second that for discussion. Discussion. Councillor Facio, and then Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. First of all, I'm not against any type of protection regarding the safety of our community. But in regards, first of all, to the 50, I think it was 50 feet clearing work to be done along the Coombs for a bigger setback. Have we been in touch with any of the environmental people in regarding to the endangered species in the sector? Besides the endangered species, there's also fauna and everything else that's endangered as well. And from that perspective of the clearing, on the actual SenseNet situation, I noticed on our map that east of the marsh, under TP4R28, west of the 6th meridian, it comes under the District of Kent. Have they been consulted in regards to installing the sensors on that perspective? And I still think that with respect to the to our public, I don't think enough consultation has been received from the public on this, or even a demonstration, which we originally did ask for before we went through with any decision on this. So I think there's still some loose ends here that have to be looked at before I feel comfortable in making a vote on this. I'm against anything for protection, but I think the consultation, the environment issues, District of Kent, and I assume that permission has been granted from the province. I'm not sure if it has or not. We haven't been told. And of course, a demonstration that should be had for the from if it's SenseNet to put on demonstration so the public can see how this operates. Because I'm sure even somebody having a barbecue with smoke blowing from north to west, that it could set these off. I don't know. As I say, I don't know how sensitive they are, but again, I have those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just answer or try to address a few of your questions there. So as far as the environment, the protection of the environment, that's all part of the prescription by the professional forester. So it's very detailed of what they have to do as far as that prescription. This is not just going in tomorrow and starting to clear cut or cut a bunch of trees out. This is again a prescription which is done by a professional forester with the environment being one of the #1 priorities of it. This was estimated to be 5 to 6 weeks just to do the detailed work. That's how detailed it has to be to protect that environment. It does not go out of the boundaries of the district of the village. The fire chief has endorsed and in fact recommended that we actually proceed with this number of sensors so that it would incorporate the entire village, not just a section of the village. This would actually now protect the entire village. And just one final note on that. This also, along with the forester, and this would be managed by village staff, the Stehalis. Stehalis, I have met with Stehalis, I met with the chief, I met with a few of their senior council members. They understand what it is that what this is about. They are willing to participate with us, and they're just waiting for staff to tell them to start going. I had Councillor Allen next. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Allen, and I think Councillor Bidell next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of corrections to Councillor Facio's comments. First of all, the area that is being identified as necessary to clear is, I believe, 50 meters, not 50 feet. So that's 150 feet back from Macomb Drive. And those are two very different issues. I expect that when the professional forester gets into doing the details of how this is going to happen and where it's going to happen and what it's going to cost, that 150-foot strip may have to be reduced, and somewhere between 50 feet and 150 is where it may end up. Secondly, there are no endangered species in that area, with the exception perhaps of the Salish sucker, which is a little fish that may exist in the Miami River and would not be affected by any of the work that is intended to be carried out. I would make the point that putting men and equipment and machinery into the woodland could in fact enhance or increase the risk of some kind of combustion. So I believe it's very important that the sensors get installed as an early part of this process, so that they're there to protect us during this construction phase while the biomass is being removed. And I believe that when we get to the point where the forester has completed his detailed examination, environmental studies, etc., we will know more about this. But the fact remains that we need to proceed and get something done to reduce the fire hazard risk presented by what I like to call the Woodlands Harrison Forest Park. And I believe that we need to move ahead with it and endorse what has been agreed already and get moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, for clarifying, and it is actually 50 meters. And I just want to clarify that the amount that was authorized was $10,400. Was it 10,000? To our Chief Financial Officer?
Thank you, Mayor Wood. It was 10,500.
$10,500. Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Through you to our Deputy CAO, I noticed that option 4 indicates staff to work with BC Wildfire Service to explore an early wildfire detection system that provides regional protection. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that option? And is BC Wildfire Service currently working with other jurisdictions in that way? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Through to Councillor Bidell. Unfortunately, I don't have detailed information on option 4 at the time, but I think if council wished staff to proceed with looking into something like that, we would definitely dig into it more.
Thank you. As I've stated previously, I think that it's far too soon to commit to any early detection system. I don't believe enough research has been done on it, and it was unfortunate that we did not have the opportunity to have Sensenet representation here at a previous council meeting. So therefore, I am not in favor of any of the options. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Worship. I'm in favor of the Sensenet. The major problem here, I live in Cottonwood Avenue, and behind us is tremendous amount of debris. I mean, you're looking at a huge cost to remove it. A real big cost, in which nobody has given us any numbers here exactly how much it's going to take. Now, hiring somebody for $10,000 is not a bad idea, but can they do that for that amount of money? Because this is a huge job. And when the Councillor Allen says there's no special species of plants in there, he's wrong. There are special. There's plants in there that feed our butterflies and other forms of insects, etc. Sure, you can go in and you can move it all out, but that doesn't mean they're not going to move back in again. So this has not been thought out about what is the long-term effect. Yes, the sensors, I'm in favor of that, but there's no plan. What's it going to cost? It could cost a couple of $100,000 to clean that out. And that's not budgeted for. So what is in place to deal with that? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll answer a couple of your questions there. So the plants are very much of a concern also from Stehalis, and that it would be part of their involvement. So it's you know, I'm pretty, I think it's a fair statement to stay here to say that the environment here would be protected. And again, it would have to, and it would require the Stehalis approval with that. And they did verbally explain to me with some concerns of their own native plants. So it is a concern, but it has been addressed, and it will be, and it is part of the professional foresters mandate. The estimated cost to do that 100 or to do the 50 meters to go all the way down Cottonwood, or sorry, to go from Cottonwood all the way to McPherson, again down McCombs, which all of us can see is there's just tremendous amount of fuel there, was estimated to cost $100,000. That contract has not been executed, it has not been signed. The professional forester would work with us to go through that process. That would be a process that staff would take. Right now, the only thing that's on the table here is the $10,500 for the forester and for the First Nations to proceed with their study. So I have nothing further to add to that. So if I could ask just the corporate officer to read the motion on the table again, please.
So there was a motion made by Councillor Allen, seconded by Mayor Wood, that council approve the two agreements that the mayor entered into, one for Sensenet and one for the registered professional forester.
So I'm going to call the question. So all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. with Councillor Vidal and Facio opposed. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, can I just correct myself
order,
on something I said?
Order, please. We're
Okay.
moving on to the next item, Councillor. We got a lot on our plate here. Let's just move on. Maybe just before I move on, I'm gonna just to the Chief Financial Officer here. Did we need to deal with the finance part of that, or will that be referred, will staff come back on that?
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I think it would be good to do it now. Basically, staff just needs direction of a funding source for this. If I were to recommend one, I would say to come from reserves. But if council wishes to go a different direction, I'm happy to.
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Or could you make a recommendation for a motion on it, please?
Yes, recommendation could be that the funding source for the professional forester and the procurement of SenseNet sensor system be taken from reserves.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll add one more thing, general reserves.
General reserves. Thank you. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Further discussion on that? All the question, all in favor? Opposed? Passes with Councillor Vidal and Facio opposed. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor
uh,
Jackson.
did we deal with the $50,000 a year, 2% tax increase to cover the yearly cost?
I'm just going to refer that to the Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I think the intention was to more just advise council that that there will be approximately 2% tax increase. The actual approval will come next year with budget, but it's more just a notification.
Thank you. Next order of business then, please.
The next order of business is correspondence. These items have already been received, so if you'd like, you can move straight into business arising from correspondence.
Thank you. So we're over to item 6, and Councillor Facio, you had a motion on the floor and it was not voted on. Would you like to continue with that? Councillor Facio.
Yes, please, Mayor Wood. Just as in regards to the Harrison Water Sports, that I'd like to put a motion on the floor that our staff engage with this company and arrange a meeting with the mayor and council and staff to discuss any further options that may be available to them. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask our corporate officer here. So we already had the motion on the table before. Is this the same motion? To our corporate officer, please.
I would just ask that it get moved and seconded again, just for clarity. It's counted as not voted on in the other minutes, so.
Good, thank you. So that was moved by Councillor Facio. Did I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion on that motion, please. Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I still don't, well, I don't approve of the motion, will not be voting for it. And my primary reason is that as I read through this, it becomes clear that the Harrison Water Sports Company may or may not have actually filed an application with the Ministry of Lands in order to take away part of the village's tenure, which we hold on the lakefront, and to acquire a private tenure there for commercial purposes. I believe that we should not be dealing with this until such time as they have actually filed an application. All the staff report tells me at this point is that the village has not received a referral letter from the Ministry of Lands, and the normal process is an individual makes an application for some use of Crown land. the ministry then sends a note to the municipal government saying, we have received this application. Do you have any comments or objections? So all that the staff report says is that the village has not received a formal request for comment from the Ministry of Lands. It doesn't clarify whether or not such an application has actually been made. And in fact, it may not have been made. So I think that we're rushing our fences here, and we're dealing with issues that are not properly before us. It only comes to council as a proper issue for discussion when the Ministry of Lands receives the report and goes through their vetting process, make sure all the criteria are fulfilled, and then sends out a letter to the village of Harrison. None of that has happened. When that happens, we can deal with it, but there's no point in us dealing with it before it happens. When it does happen, I will have serious objections to it because of the fact that it sets a precedent for giving away public land for private commercial use, and is contrary to our OCP and in violation of our zoning bylaw, which the current water park actually may also be in violation of our current zoning bylaw. And I think that it's out of order for us to be even discussing this at the staff level until the matter is properly put before us by referral letter from the Ministry of Lands, and that has not happened. And in fact, it may not happen. The Ministry of Lands may choose to reject the application out of hand just because this is one party, being Harrison Water Sports, applying to take over part of a tenure that's already held by the village of Harrison Hot Springs. And in my 30 years of dealing with this, I've never heard of somebody launching a hostile takeover bid for part of another person's tenure. It's unprecedented. Thank you.
You, Councillor Jackson.
Yes, sure. So again, we went through another speech. We heard it last council
Order,
meeting.
order, please.
No, the
Councillor.
point is this, we're not looking at it going where the document says. Nobody's in favor of that. But there may be some other place west of the airplane dock that it could go. It could. It might be good business, at least to look at it and think about it, rather than like everything else that Councillor Allen has brought forward. He's against everything, no matter what it is. We have to have some positive thinking here in this council. So please, let's get on with the agenda and quit the pontifications.
Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Through you to our planning consultant. During your discussions with the business owners, was there at any time sort of like any alternate locations presented? Thank you.
So before our planner responds to that, there's a confidential matter of which I will not allow the planner to speak.
What is this
Council,
confidential matter, your
Order,
worship?
please. Order, please.
What is this confidential matter?
Order, please.
What is the confidential matter?
I am speaking. Order, please. If this council wishes to allow the planner to proceed, knowing that there's confidential matters, then I would ask for Councillor to put a motion on the table. Next, carry on, please, Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Then I will go through you and redirect to our Deputy Corporate Officer and inquire from him whether he has also entered into any of those discussions with the owners of the. Thank you.
Councillor Vidal, your microphone was humming away, so I didn't hear it. I don't know if staff heard that. Did staff hear it okay? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I'll defer to our corporate officer.
Thank you. Through you to Councillor Vidal. There have been discussions. There were no other alternative locations determine that would be suitable. The village has a license of occupation over the foreshore, and that's not an exclusive use license. It's not, it grants fewer rights than a lease if we were to have a crown lease. So whether a section of our tenure over that area of land would have to be given up in order to allow them to have a moorage there isn't clear. Again, it's discussed and it was brought before this council because it was referred back to staff. I believe it was back in October. It had been placed on the agenda as correspondence and then was referred back to staff for more information. After that time, we did discuss with Harrison Water Sports and their representative over the phone. Again, talking about the concerns that are noted in the staff report with regards to the swimming area and the water intake. And no further alternatives were identified.
Councillor Vidal?
Thank you. Harrison Water Sports, in my opinion, is an integral part of the business community here in Harrison and has been for some time. And I do believe that they at least should be given the opportunity to be heard. I certainly have a few questions and concerns that I would raise should a meeting be called. So I do support Councillor Facio's motion to meet with them. Thank you.
Councillor Vidal, just for clarification, staff just have informed me if you have questions, I believe they are in the audience and they're available to answer your questions at this time. Councillor Vidal, did you have any questions of the?
Not at this time, Mayor Wood, and once again, I support Councillor Facio's motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And to the corporate officer, yes, please.
If council would like to have a special meeting, I would probably suggest a committee of the whole if possible, just to facilitate more of that discussion. I find those presentations go a little better at those committee of the whole meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any councillor that wants to move an amendment to refer it to a committee of the whole?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Facio is moving to move it, an amendment to refer to the committee of the whole. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Jackson. Further discussion on referring this to the committee of the whole? Ready to call the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes with Councillor Allen opposed. So I have to go back to the main motion again. Is that correct, to the corporate officer?
Thank you. Yeah, you can vote on the motion as amended.
Can you just read out that first motion for me, please, or to the corporate officer?
That staff refer the Harrison Water Sports proposal to a committee of the whole.
And so ready to call the question on that. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. So on to next order of business, please.
The next order of business is the report of the Environmental Advisory Committee dated May 21st. Oh, sorry, the title is Reports of Councillors, Committees, Committee of the Whole and Commissions. The first item is report of the Environmental Advisory Committee.
So again, it's the report of the Environmental Advisory Committee dated May the 21st, 2024, page 13. There's one item on there that the Environmental Advisory Committee has recommended to council, and I'm going to move that the committee's recommendation as per page 13 be approved by council, and that is that council directs staff to explore thermoplastic options to replacing the existing fish markings on storm drains in the village. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Discussion on that. Maybe I'm just going to start with discussion here just first. So what this is every year, the Stream Keepers Society, we're blessed to have them here. They go to every storm drain throughout the village here, and they paint a little, say, a 12-inch yellow fish symbol so that people have an understanding of what's going down the storm drains. But this is something that they have to do, excuse me, on a yearly basis because it just wears off quite quickly. So this was a recommendation from the Environmental Committee that we use something that would last for many years to come. So that's where that came from. Go ahead, Councillor Ellen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just speaking in favor of the recommendation. And I wanted to note that this program was originally started by a Harrison resident, Mark Saraka. And I think it's very useful to remind people that when they're washing their car in their driveway and the soapy water is running into the gutter, it's heading to the storm drain and into the Miami River. If there are some environmental friendly car wash shampoos, I think we should recommend that people use those, or even better, just park your car on the lawn, don't use any soap, and allow it to soak into the water to soak into the ground. I think we can do so much more to protect our environment, and this is one small step that I approve of entirely. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that, Councillor Facio?
Thank you, Mayor. We'd just like to thank the Stream Keepers for that, and also Mrs. Saraka for all the years of work they've carried out this painting. And I'm not sure how many storm drains there are in the village, but I'm guessing, I don't know, 300-400. But they do an amazing work, not just by doing those small treatments, but for the work they do around the Miami as well. Thank you very much to the Stream Keepers.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal?
Thank you, Mayor. What through you to our Deputy CAO and Chief Financial Officer, did we get any costing estimates on replacing them? Thank you.
I'm going to answer that question, Councillor. This is not directing us to do it. This is just the resolution. Sorry, I just turned the page over. The resolution was that council directs staff to explore the options to replace the existing fish markings on the storm drains.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Then I will perhaps add a friendly amendment to that resolution, and to have staff report back to council when a confirmed costing is obtained. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not going to accept the friendly amendment on that. So we're back to the main motion here. Councillor Jackson, did you have anything? No. Okay, so the motion on the table here is that I'll get the corporate officer to actually read it out, please.
The motion on the table is to accept the Environmental Advisory Committee's recommendation that council directs staff to explore thermoplastic options to replace the existing fish markings on storm drains in the village.
Thank you. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. So the next here is reports from councillors. So Councillor Vidal, would you like to start first, please?
Thank you, Mayor Wood. On May 7th, I had the opportunity to attend the seniors lunch, which is an annual lunch sponsored by Agassiz Harrison Community Services. It's always well attended and such a good opportunity for our seniors who may be living alone, the opportunity to get out and socialize. May 13th, I attended Lower Mainland Local Government Association Executive Board meeting. And the purpose of this meeting was for a debriefing on the recent conference that was held in Whistler. May 21st, I attended Community Futures North Fraser Executive Board meeting. And yesterday, upon invitation from Chief Genest, I had the privilege of attending their joint training session with Mission and Hope Fire Departments in looking at structural protection in the event of interface wildfire. And I see Chief Janest, he was here in the gallery. Others.
She's right behind you.
I just wanted to thank you very much, Chief, for the invitation. I thoroughly enjoyed it and certainly learned a lot. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I attended yesterday also at the practice that was being held around the village office by the Harrison Fire Department, along with the Mission and the Hope Fire Departments, and had quite a long chat with the fire chief about the concern surrounding the landscaping in the vicinity of the village office and the new tourist info center. And I believe that we will need to do a major rethink of our landscaping around the village office in light of the fire smart considerations, and also in consideration of opening up the visibility of that office again, as it was originally landscaped in the style of a Victorian garden when the house was built in 1886 or 87. So I think that in doing that, I've been looking around the village, and a lot of our landscaping is over mature and needs to be either relocated or otherwise removed and replaced by more adequate stuff. It's very easy to not notice how big some of our plantings are growing, and they are defeating some of the original purposes of enhancing the scenery by in fact obstructing the scenery. So I think that we need to at some point take a look at all of our landscaping in the village and all of our overgrown areas in light of the forest fire smart program. And I look forward to an opportunity of having that discussion with the new coordinator and perhaps with Jace in Public Works to see what we can do about revisiting some of those areas to both make the village more attractive and safer at the same time. I'm particularly concerned about the trees, the large trees in the vicinity of the village office, because I think that some of those may need to be closely examined with a view towards either reducing or in fact removing some of the higher branches which are grown in an unsafe manner through splitting of the tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson, and then Councillor Passion.
Yeah, thank you. July the 1st meeting I attended a week or so ago. Everything is going along very, very well. It should be a very exciting day. We're still looking for more entrants in the parade, and we will accept anything right up to the last hour. I attended the Fraser Valley Regional Library meeting. The removal of the asbestos from their old building is almost all complete, and they'll all be able to move in again. We dealt with the 2025 budget for the library. I must say that everything's in really good financial shape there. The number of people joining the library and taking out cards each month is increasing, which is very, very good. Our libraries are a meeting point for everybody, and that's one of the big, really nice things about them. People go there, they feel very safe, and they've carried on, and they're doing a great job. I attended the fire demonstration yesterday, and I thought it was a really, really good thing to see. And that's my report, Charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Passion.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. Just to follow up on the other three councillors, I attended the fire demonstration yesterday. I'd like to thank Chief Janest for organising it with his team, and of course we had Mission and Hope there, and it's just kudos to these men and women out there on the weekend and looking at ways to protect our communities. I applaud them for that. At the Fraser Valley regional district. One of the main topics that's come forward now, and it's going to become a major issue with the electoral areas specifically, and the province is going to be the illegal dumping of waste from building sites. It's become a big issue in the electoral area, especially around Coltis and Dewsney, those areas. Some of these contractors are basically buying land and just using it as a dumping ground. And the $100,000 fine is nothing, just a drop in the bucket for the amount of money they get for this, for the hauling. Also, it's been found on ALR land as well. That's another major problem. So they're moving forward to come up with some ideas. They have an advocacy committee with the electoral areas to work at ways to stop this illegal dumping. And I will mention to our citizens and our businesses that illegal dumping is illegal in Harrison as well, as there was some illegal dumping being carried on, I believe, at the breakwater a couple of weeks ago. And it's these things are not to be done. You know, there's plenty of places where you can get rid of your stuff. And for residents, as we know, we have a great collection service for your small cuttings and grass. So please use that. Thank you. There was a delegation from the Fraser Valley Transit update. There's a feasibility study still moving forward to connect Agassiz with Highway 7 and Mission. Hopefully that could be in place by next year. They're in the process of acquiring BC Transit. This is 6.7 acres on Progress Way in Chilliwack for their new depot. And eventually they'll be transitioning over to EV buses. One of the big problems, and actually it was on the news, I think, in regards to non-payment on buses. This is becoming a problem with the bus drivers. They're being threatened, and they won't take the payment if they're being threatened. They just let people ride free, and this is quite a few that are doing this, unfortunately. So there's no policing like there is in Vancouver for our local transit service. So that's another issue that they're trying to deal with. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next order of business, please.
The next order of business is reports from mayor.
Just for time here, so I have nothing to report here. So the next order, please.
Moving on to reports from staff. The first one is report of corporate officer regarding release of legal invoices.
So I'm just going to read it out here. So the recommendation is that the corporate officer's report dated May the 21st, 2024, attaching legal services or legal invoices, identifying the subject matter and dollar amount from November 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2024 be received for information. Do I have a mover?
Motion, Mayor Wood.
Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on this? Councillor Allen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it was with great interest that I perused these billing summaries. And I would just like to point out that quite often the lawyers will be about 60 days behind the fact when it comes to billing. And while these amounts may seem alarming, I'd just like to warn the public that when you get the next round of these bills for the subsequent months, that the numbers will rise dramatically. And I would say that there'll be another $50,000 in legal bills within the second quarter of this year, judging by the amount of activity that I'm aware of being carried out by Lidstone and others under directions of the village staff. So just a warning, This is nothing. There's a lot more to come. Thank you.
Any other discussion, councillors? So the motion on the table is that the corporate officer's report dated March 21st, 2024, attaching legal invoices identifying the subject matter and dollar amount from November 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2024 be received for information. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. The next item, please.
The next item is report of Community Services Manager regarding the Accessible Playground and Shade Features Contract Award.
To our Community Services Manager, please.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. A bit of a background here. The Accessible Playground and Shade Features project is from the village's 2022, 2023 to 2024, 2025 resort development strategy, utilizing Resort Municipality Initiative funding. Over the past several years, the village has been focusing on increasing accessible tourism with projects including the installation of Moby mats for water access, the construction of an accessible viewing platform, and the installation of accessible picnic tables. To further promote inclusive play, an accessible playground will be installed at the beachfront. In response to climate change and the need for relief from the heat, shade features will also be installed. The existing 5 to 12-year-old age playground will be removed and replaced with new playground equipment. Rubber surfacing will be installed while still including a portion of the playground to have sand to support site maintenance by village staff. A shade feature will be added above the existing Tots Beach playground to provide shade until this playground equipment reaches the end of its lifespan. At that time, staff will determine if any further play equipment is required or determine a usage for this covered space. Swings, including a molded bucket swing, will be added to the existing grass area beside the Tots playground, with plans to add rubber surfacing at this location if future funding permits. A goal of this RDS project is to enhance visitor experience and satisfaction by improving the quality and quantity of tourism amenities and tourism-related infrastructure. It also aims to increase the number of accessible or barrier-free amenities by adding on to existing amenities and installing at least one new amenity. The village engaged in a competitive tender process and issued a request for proposals on February 1st, 2024. The village received 8 proposals by the closing date of February 28th, 2024, and completed an evaluation based on financial, corporate, and technical criteria. As outlined in the village's purchasing and procurement policy number 1.08, given that this project was included in the approved financial plan, staff has awarded the contract to Habitat Systems. Project work is set to commence in mid-September 2024. Below are images to highlight a few of the inclusive play features of this project: a communication board and fully wheelchair accessible We Go Round. Along with the inclusion of accessible rubber surfacing, the proposal called for a number of 3D characters. Drawings are still being finalized, but some preliminary examples can be seen below. The next couple of pages, 37 and 38, have another example of rubber surfacing in a 3D sandcastle form. The goal of that, as it will be in the area where the sand is still located, is that children will utilize the space and gain inspiration to build their own creations alongside it. And there's just an overall concept drawing of the area, as well as an overall concept of the rubber surfacing designs. The RFP submitted by Habitat Systems quotes the project at a total cost of up to $700,000. Funding for this project will come from the Resort Municipality Initiative. This fits into our strategic plan priority of a healthy, livable community. The recommendation from staff is that the Community Services Manager's report dated May 21st, 2024, regarding the Accessible Playground and Shade Features Contract Award to Habitat Systems be received for information.
Do I have a mover?
So moved, Mayor Wood.
Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Vidal. Discussion? Councillor Facio and then Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Would just like to thank the Community Services Manager for this report, and it's great to see that now we're looking at the at putting in the accessibility for those who are not as fortunate as some other of the younger people who come here or live in our community. It's a great addition. It will make a big improvement. I've had lots of calls regarding the swing sets coming back. So that's great that they're going to be there. And it will certainly enhance that area with the new plaza that's there as well. And it's going to be a great, not just for the visitors, but it'll be a great area for for our local children to go and enjoy themselves as well. Thank you.
Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Let me start by saying I'm very much in favor of playgrounds in Harrison Hot Springs. And I enjoy, and the kids enjoy the little playground that's just to the east of the plaza currently. But I'm a bit distressed by a couple of items on this particular project. The first being the cost. I'm astounded that we're spending $700,000 on what appears to be a very small playground. And it just boggles my mind that this could cost this much money. The second concern I have is that it appears from the maps, and the maps do not do a very good job of enlightening me as to where exactly this is to be located, but the text seems to indicate that the existing playground to the east of the plaza is going to be demolished and perhaps scrapped, and this will replace it. I would much prefer to see the existing playground left exactly where it is. I'm very much in favor of having the swings added back. And in fact, I'd really like to see the big swing that used to exist in front of Memorial Hall, an adult swing, restored, because everybody enjoyed that, including oldies like me. And I really think that we should stop cramming everything into the one point on the beach, that being the plaza area. We need to think about our lakefront as a whole. And I would very much like council to consider, since the contract has been signed for construction, that's not going to change, but I would very much like the council to consider building this new playground not as a replacement for the existing playground, but as a supplementary playground on its own site. And the site that I have in mind is to move to the southeast corner of the lagoon in Block 4, up on the grass near the boat launch parking lot, where we have adequate space to do it, and that we establish that as a standalone site for the accessible playground, and make that in itself an extra feature of the beach, being the second playground, and if necessary, add signage to the existing playground, redirecting those who wish to use an accessible playground, that it's a couple of blocks to the east. So my suggestion would be that the village, I mean, I don't know where this came from in planning considerations. I didn't see any planning done around the location until this report comes and says it's going to replace the existing playground. We have no playgrounds in the south of Harrison Village. We have some playgrounds in Spring Park, and we really need to do our Parks and Trails Master Plan, which has been called for in the OCP for many years and has never been enacted or worked on. So my suggestion is, if you're going to do this accessible playground, please make it not a reduction in playground facilities, but an addition by putting it on its own site at the other end of the lagoon and making it a feature in itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? So the motion on the table here is, sorry, it's on 2 pages. To the corporate officer, can you help me, please?
That the Community Services Manager's report dated May 21st, 2024 regarding accessible playground and shade features contract award to Habitat Systems be received for information.
Thank you. Ready to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Passes with Councillor Allen opposed. Next item, please.
The next item was the report of planning consultant regarding Harrison Water Sports Crown Land tenure application. Earlier on in the meeting, there was the motion to refer it to a committee of the whole. If you like, we can just deem that item previously discussed.
Thank you. So the next item, please.
The next item is report of planning consultant dated May 21st, 2024 regarding a development permit for 318 Hot Springs Road.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask staff just to read the recommendation here, please. Page 57.
The recommendation is that development permit DP 05/23 be issued to 1044018 BC Limited for property located at 318 Hot Springs Road, Harrison Hot Springs, for land legally described as Lot E, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan 251, subject to the village receiving an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $7,613.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion. Councillor Allen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the question I have is, how was it that this building was allowed to be built in plain sight of the highway that we all drive up and down, and no bylaw enforcement action was taken when the building was under construction? To me, this is another example of inadequate enforcement of our land use bylaws in the village. It's a very nice structure. It's a lovely little cottage. It's a shame to see it go, but it was built illegally and the village never lifted a finger to do anything about that illegal construction. So I don't lay all of the blame for this on the applicants and the people who built it, but I do think we have a problem in allowing things to happen in Harrison contrary to our zoning bylaw and not doing anything about it. There's something wrong here. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, so unless council wants, I will not read it back out. So ready to call the question then. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. I would like to also move that staff be authorized to approve the business license. I don't know if I have the name right. I'll ask the corporate officer for that, for the tea house. Do I have a seconder?
Move, Mayor Wood.
It's moved by myself, so seconded by Councillor Facio. Discussion on the approval of the business license. Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to speak in favor of that. I believe that these are two quite separate buildings. The building where the tea house is to be located was in operation for many years as an excellent Japanese restaurant, and I see no reason why it wasn't issued a business license for that building, and the issue of the two separate buildings separated at that point. So I'm in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? So we're ready to call the question. Just read the motion here that staff be authorized to immediately approve the business license for the tea house. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item, please.
The next item is report of planning consultant regarding development permit at 511 Lillooet Avenue.
Same thing. If I could just ask the corporate officer to read the recommendation on page 79, please.
So the recommendation is that development permit DP 05/22 be issued to 2118 Development Limited for property located at 511 Lillooet Avenue, Harrison Hot Springs, for land legally described as Lot A, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan EPP 108940, subject to the following: the registration of a safe, harmless flood covenant that is acceptable to the village be placed on title. For the installation of or the placement of any signs on the building or structure, the applicant must follow the requirements as outlined in the Village of Harrison Hot Springs sign bylaw number 1126/2018, as amended from time to time, To start this process, a comprehensive sign plan application must be submitted and approved by the village. The pending zoning bylaw text amendments associated with this site are approved. The applicant entering into a works and services agreement to address servicing, frontage improvements, the placement of street furniture, and the update to the Rendell Park washroom facilities. The applicant entering into a works and services agreement to address the landscaping requirements. The applicant entering into a covenant to address the placement of an electric vehicle charging outlet, and the village receiving an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $2,052,334.
Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Passio. Discussion? Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a number of concerns that are not addressed in the development permit, and I think they should be. First of all, we have been told by some experts that Harrison is at risk of being flooded by high water in Harrison Lake and wave run-up in Harrison Lake. We've had numerous presentations made here in this hall and at council saying that we need to build a wall along the lakefront, a flood wall that will be perhaps 2 meters high. And that is a major project that's going to cost many millions of dollars if it goes ahead. The thinking from the government seems to be that it is necessary to do that in response to climate change. The businesses of Harrison Hot Springs are only now starting to realize that adding 2 feet to the height of the dike all the way along the esplanade will completely block the view and access to the beach and potentially destroy the village as a destination resort. But I raise this issue because there's an opportunity with this development and with the development slightly further along the block that instead of building a 2 foot or 2 meter high wall right along in the middle of Rendell Park, we can use the wall that's going to be built anyway as part of this project as a starting point for a storm wall running all the way from the end of Esplanade at the boat launch all the way to Rockwell Drive. And my suggestion, which I already tried to explain to council a couple of months ago, is that this project should require that the wall which is being built anyway on the property line fronting on Rendell Park be reinforced, even if the village has to contribute to that reinforcement, be reinforced so that it can serve a dual purpose of supporting the building in the future and also providing a part of the projected 2 meter high flood protection barrage in that part of the lakefront. I don't see this as being an enormously expensive thing to do. It may require a little more rebar, a little bit more concrete, maybe some forming, but the wall is being built anyway, and we should just make sure that that wall can be incorporated into our future flood defenses in the future, rather than building this wall and then a second wall further out on Rendell Park in the future. It just, to me, if we're doing planning here, planning requires that we think ahead. We know that we need a flood wall. We're having a condo wall built. Let's build it to that height. I have a couple of other concerns about the recommendation. I am still opposed to the height of this building. I know that the parking can be put underground as it is in all of our other condo buildings, and that parking disappears underground. And I do not accept the contention of the developer that it is impossible to build underground parking in Harrison We've been doing it for years and will continue to do it, and this site is actually higher than most of them. I'm also concerned that there's nothing in front of me as a councillor at this point that indicates that the fire department has examined this plan and is satisfied with the access to the building from all three sides for fire fighting or fire protection or fire response. And I have not yet seen the fire department come back and say that they're satisfied with that. I believe that because of the shape of the building, we probably need to provide an access on the north side through Rendell Park in order to be able to get into that courtyard and deal with any fire that occurs in the building on that side. I've also seen nothing indicating the fulfillment of one of the requirements of these developments, and that is that they contribute either 5% of their land area or 5% of the equivalent value of the land area to our park reserve fund. Of all the people moving into Harrison Hot Springs, those living in condominium style apartments, or apartment style condominiums to be more precise, are the ones who most need parkland and open green space. So I need to know from my perspective as a councillor that this issue has been addressed and that the amount of money that this developer will contribute to our parkland reserve fund is adequate, that we can in fact start to do something about providing more green space and open space in the village of Harrison Hot Springs for that purpose. Other than that, the one issue that has been a constant
Mayor,
in this discussion
enough.
has been
No.
the protection of trees. I don't see the tree protection plan as part of this development permit, and I believe that it should be. I'm very concerned that we're losing a lot of our heritage and mature trees in that area, and I don't see them being protected in this development permit, and I think that they need to be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to call the question. I'm not going to read it out unless council wants me to read this out. Don't see that. We're ready to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes with Councillor Allen and the mayor opposed. The next item, please.
The next item is item G, report of planning consultant dated May 21st, 2024 regarding a development permit for 553 and 555 Lillooet Avenue.
So once again, if the corporate officer can just read out page 111, just the recommendation, please.
So the recommendation is that development permit DP 03/23 be issued to 1103-593 BC Limited for property located at 533 and 555 Lillooet Avenue, Harrison Hot Springs, for land legally described as Lot 2, except part subdivided by Plan 70793, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan 59945, and Lot A, Section 13, Township 4, Range 29, west of the 6th Meridian, New Westminster District Plan 70793, subject to the following. The village receiving an irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of $650,353. The Fraser Valley Regional District issuing a demolition permit for any building or structures on the proposed site. The provision of at least one electric vehicle charging outlet being installed on the proposed site. The village being provided with a copy of the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure access permit. The provision of a covenant indicating that the applicant must provide at least 4 accessible parking stalls that are the closest to the proposed development. A comprehensive sign permit being issued by the village. The applicant entering into a works and services agreement for utilities and frontage improvements with the village. The applicant entering into a landscape agreement with the village. The applicant entering into a floodplain covenant. the application be referred to the village's fire department for their comments and recommendations. Any recommendations must be included in the planning review stage on the issuance of a building permit, and a report prepared by a competent professional with at least 10 years of professional experience and accepted by the village that addresses the estimation on the demand to be generated by the proposed development for water and sewer services, and in the case of any phase development, by each phase of the development. An analysis of the existing community water systems and the existing community sewer system, and outlining the options available for the supply and delivery of water and the provision of sewer services to the proposed development. An estimation of the amount of additional surface drainage that could be generated by the proposed development and the options available for on-site retention, absorption, collection, storage, and dispersal of such drainage. Identification of, if applicable, the new capital works required for the proposed development for water, sewer, and the drainage systems and their cost, and the potential funding sources for these expenditures.
Thank you. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Discussion? Councillor Facio.
Thank you, Mayor Wood. I'd like to thank Mr. Cossey for his report. I'm glad to see the professional, at least 10-year professional experience to look at the estimation of demand on our water and sewer. That's I think that's great to have that in place now. With these 38 dwelling units, I would like to see at least 20% of those units be put into a rental pool. One thing that we have to look into the future now for the village is that we start having some rental. So people who are either working here, who cannot afford a home or whatever case may be, can at least rent somewhere to live. So I would like to see a portion of that go into I'm saying 20%. I don't see on the drawings a sidewalk on Lillooet, unless I've missed it, but I don't see it there. I think that should, because that definitely should be added to that. And the provision for, in this day and age now, with the moving towards EVs, I would suggest more than just one electric vehicle charging outlet. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Allen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is the first time this has showed up at council, and again, I was surprised, not in a good way, that it suddenly appeared before me for approval with no prior discussion or notification. And I think that there's something wrong with our process when that happens. So some of my concerns are, now let me just say that I'm quite familiar with this property because it used to be occupied by Roberta Burke. Tom and Roberta lived there for many years, and she was kind of the grand dame of East Harrison, for those who might remember. I don't believe that the buildings have any particular heritage value apart from their occupancy, but I would like to make a couple of points that I think are missing in this consideration. First of all, the development permit itself certainly has a parcel identifier numbers and a legal description, but it doesn't actually have the civic address. And I believe that all such documents need to be clear, and they should state the civic address, and this one doesn't. And that makes it really difficult for anybody reviewing this in the future to know what property they're talking about without going back and doing further research. And that's more or less an administrative oversight that needs to be corrected. I would repeat my comments about the flood protection wall that we've been hearing about that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. In this project, again, if I'm reading the sketches of the proposal correctly, the wall along the property line fronting on Rendell Park is going to be a solid concrete wall, or could be a solid concrete wall. And that wall, if it were to be built, perhaps it's going to be adequately built for the purpose, but if it needs to be built thicker or reinforced to also serve as the flood wall for the future, then I believe that that should happen at this stage in the project. I don't understand why the neighbors have not been notified of this. As far as I know, the neighborhood notification, which is supposed to come at the start of any such a project, should have gone out, and the neighbors should have known that we, the council, are considering this particular development permit, and that seems to be missed. And as somebody who's very keen to ensure that the public knows what's going on in the village, I would like to know that everybody in that block from Rockwell Drive back to the boat launch is aware that this project is before council and being considered. I see nothing in the development permit that talks about the trees, and we do have trees on Rendell Park, which I believe may not be affected by this project, but I just like to guarantee that none of the trees in Rendell Park are to be removed as part of this project. I was very disappointed when the Aqua project at the end of the west end of the Esplanade promised us that the 2 oak trees on Lillooet Avenue would be preserved. And in fact, one of them was taken out because it was inconvenient for the developer to work around it. So I think that we need to get the guarantee that the public trees will be protected and preserved. And that needs to be a term of this agreement to start with. My previous concern about the provision of the 5% cash in lieu for the creation or the purchase of parkland applies to this project, just like it did for 511 Lillooet. We need to know as councillors, or I certainly need to know as a councillor, that we will be getting enough money from the occupants of these apartments to provide the green space that they will be demanding in the future, and I don't see anything about that. One other consideration that has been ignored is a
Mr. Mayor,
term of
Could we get
our,
on with the meeting, please?
Order, please.
No, we've already heard all of this already.
No,
Looks like a
Mr.
record.
Mr. Mayor, can I continue?
Continue.
One of the things that I don't see here is a term that is part of our official community plan. And that term says that in order to enhance pedestrian access throughout the village, when we have long blocks of property and there's an opportunity to create a pathway in the middle of the block so people can move from Lillooet to the beach and back and forward, we should provide that pathway. Next door, you have the Echo Beach property. On the other side is the Laguna Beach property. And in between those is a little pathway. It's only 4 or 5 feet wide, but it is a very, very useful and well-used linkage for people who park in Lillooet and come forward to the beach or muddy waters. And I believe there's an opportunity in this project being in the middle of the block for us as a council to insist that there be a pathway on one side of the building as close to mid-block as possible in order that people can move from Lillooet Avenue to Rendell Park without having to go all the way to Rockwell Drive or back to Spruce Street and round by the boat launch ramp. So with those reservations, I think that this needs to go back to the APC for review. It hasn't been to the APC yet, and council should send it to the APC, and those issues need to be addressed, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion, Councillor Jackson?
No, Your Worship, I've heard it all.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal,
No comments, Mayor Wood.
thank you. So I didn't see any amendments on the table here, but it sounds like Councillor Facio and Councillor Allen have some very valid comments and concerns. So I'm going to make an amendment here that this be referred back to staff to look at the comments addressed by council tonight. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Any discussion on the amendment to refer this back to staff? Okay, ready to call the question again, and that's that the motion is that this be referred back to staff to look at the comments from Councillor Facio and Councillor Allen. I'll call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously. It'd be referred back to staff. Next item, please.
Moving on to bylaws. Item A is the discharge of firearms bylaw number 1207, 2024. There's no report associated to that as it was previously presented at the May 6, 2024 council meeting. So the motion on the table is that discharge of firearms bylaw number 1207, 2024 be adopted.
Do I have a mover?
For adoption, Mayor Wood.
By Councillor Facio, seconded by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion on this? Councillor Allen.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is, to me, I don't know why we are wasting time and staff time dealing with this bylaw. Because to my mind, this is a petty issue, and I don't see any reason why we should repeal the 1958 bylaw. And my biggest objection is that the new bylaw in its definitions says firearm means a rifle, a shotgun, a handgun. I'm okay with all three of those because those are actually firearms that require an explosive device to propel a projectile. But then it goes on to say that a firearm now means an air gun, a spring gun, or any device that propels a projectile by means of explosion, compressed gas, air, or spring. And that includes kiddies running around with a pop gun. And I just don't see how the village of Harrison Hot Springs has the authority to rewrite the English language and pretend that a spring gun or a device that propels a projectile is a firearm. A firearm is specifically a weapon that is used by the explosion within a cartridge to project a bullet or a slug. And to my mind, we have no right to be rewriting the English language and coming up with nonsense definitions. So I'm happy enough with the first three parts of the definition, but I'd like air gun, spring gun, or any device to be removed from the definitions. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll read out the motion again. Is that the discharge of firearms bylaw 1207, 2024 be adopted? Ready to call the question, all in favor? Opposed? Passes with Councillor Allen opposed. Next item, please.
Next item is item B, report of planning consultant regarding small scale multi-unit housing requirements.
And the same thing, could the corporate officer just read the recommendation for me, please?
The recommendations are that council directs staff to apply for an exemption on the prescribed number of housing units on a given lot, commonly referred to as site standards B and C, and that council directs staff to post the required public notice for the adoption of the attached zoning amendment bylaw number 1208, 2024.
Do I have a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Facio. Discussion. Councillor Allen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure why we're dealing with this either. I've attended the housing conference in Vancouver with Minister Kalon and others, and my understanding from that and from reading the legislation is that because we are a village of less than 5,000 people, and always will be, I expect, this new initiative of the NDP government to compulsory rezone and densify our residential neighborhoods does not apply to us, and we are exempt. So if we're exempt, why are we adopting this bylaw? I also would observe that the adoption of the new standards by Victoria, while it may have got some legs currently, Mr. Eby, the Premier, has called an election. And I expect that the leaders of the other parties will be making an election issue of this. And I expect that when we go to the polls in October and the voters of BC are asked, do you approve of the densification of your neighborhoods? If so, vote to reinstate the NDP. That result might change, and the legislation which has been adopted in a hurry by the current government in Victoria may quickly disappear, and we're back to looking after the community that we live in for ourselves. So I'm opposed to adopting this bylaw, and I believe that there is no urgency in doing so. If there were any deadlines, the deadlines that we were given were the end of June, and here we are dealing with this at the beginning of May, unnecessarily, in my opinion. So I would strongly encourage council to vote against this bylaw and take a wait and see attitude and see if there are any further amendments coming back on the provincial legislation, or if in fact we are required to even adopt such a bylaw and accede to Victoria's demands that they be allowed to densify our neighborhoods, even though we have clearly said that we have housing standards in Harrison. We like the single family neighborhoods, and we want to keep them the way they are. And we don't have the infrastructure to support densification anyway. So I'm opposed to this bylaw. Thank you.
I'm going to actually move that this be tabled. Do I have a seconder for tabling? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Just going to call the question on this be tabled. Councillor.
Your worship, the problem is what Mr. Allen pontificated on is if the NDP get reelected, then they're going to say, well, what our policies are, they'll feel strengthened. This is just so, this is a idea here is just to try to point out to them that we don't agree with what they're doing. And I don't think there's anybody around this table wants any identification of Harrison. So this is just an idea to move ahead, not continually move back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So there should be no discussion on the motion for tabling, but I allowed you to speak, Councillor. So I'm going to call the question on tabling this report. All in favor? Opposed? Tabling motion fails with Councillor Jackson, Vidal, and Facio opposed. So we're back into the original motion. So further discussion. Seeing none. I mean, this report, this report scares the hell out of me. So there's a lot of implications in this report. For council to pass something like this now without, I mean, the infrastructure alone here, I mean, the whole dynamics of what this village is going to look like. You're starting something which is leading down a path, I think, which is just, it's going to totally destroy, I believe, why most of the people here moved to this village. We're talking about, on my piece of property, I can have potentially four different dwellings on my piece of property. Well, the sewers have never been engineered for that. The water systems have never been engineered for that. Why we would even consider making these drastic changes. We have a water master report. I can't remember which one's coming first, the water or the wastewater, but there's a number of reports that are coming forth. So for council to jump in on this, I think that I would hope that those two master plans would be considering the provincial changes. So that we can be ahead of the game. I mean, just to start to allow development here and then to potentially flooding out your neighbor down the street. I mean, that's not the behavior where we want to go. I think we want to be proactive, not reactive here. This is going to drastically, it's drastically going to change where we're going to go. We have an election coming up. I believe it's important to wait until the election and see what happens. It's clearly my understanding that this does not apply to us, but I don't know the better. So again, I was hoping to table this. So is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, I'm going to call the motion here first. I'll read the motion out. So that council directs staff to apply for an exemption of the prescribed number of housing units on a given lot, commonly referred to as a site standards B and C, and that council directs staff to post a required public notice for the adoption of the attached zoning amendment bylaw number 1208/2024. So I call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes with Councillor Allen and the mayor opposed. Next order of business, please.
There's no additional new business, so moving on to questions from the public.
Any questions from the public? To our fire chief.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not really a question, more of, I would like to clarify some comments made in the documents that were given to the village and anyone else that wanted to go online to view the SenseNet system. On the discussion side of things, under paragraph 3, there's a comment made that with discussions with an FD member, it was determined that FD members will not enter the forest area as the area falls on the BC Wildfire Service jurisdiction. Therefore, they would notify appropriate authorities to respond accordingly. The village FD would only be on scene to provide support. This was obviously made under if there was a wildfire in the area. That comment is false. The fire department will be going into any area within the village to conduct proper fire suppression when it comes to an interface wildfire in the area. Of course, it would be hard for us to go into the east sector, but our members will do as much as they can to get through. So not sure if this is the proper place to do it, but I believe that with all the questions that I've been asked over the last 2.5 weeks regarding this, it was the proper time to bring it forward and make these clarifying statements on that. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I think that's very important. And just for some housekeeping, just to the chief again, can you help me what page that was on?
Yes, sorry, that is I believe page 8. But when you go into the documents itself, under the council report, it is page 3, paragraph 1, halfway down when it starts, when the system detects a fire.
So just to the question to the corporate officer. So from what I'm looking at here, this is just a report. There's no minutes that reflect that in any way. Is that correct?
Sorry, no minutes that reflect.
Does this is just a report. So what the fire chief is saying, this does not reflect in any minutes that paragraph there. Is that correct?
We could put the comments under questions from the public and just say that the fire chief offered some clarification regarding that particular section of the staff report.
Sounds good. Do we need a motion for that? No. Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. Go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon. I have a question, and it's more clarification regarding the voting on the SenseNet and the clearing. The clearing was very clear, but the two were kind of lumped into one. Now, what option did council actually vote on, or was it just a general vote to move ahead?
Council voted on both the options.
Okay,
Well, they weren't options, they were contracts. That was a contract to do 50 meters,
yes,
and that was to do down McComas from Cottonwood all the way down to McPherson. And the other one was to do the sensor system per the recommendation of the fire chief of 100 sensors, 3 cameras, and I believe it was 5 gateways.
so we're going with the maximum. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
You know,
I had a second question, but I'll spare the counselor the public embarrassment regarding his garbage management issue. Thank you. You have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there any questions from anybody on Zoom?
Hi, my name is
Just 1 second. I'm
sorry.
just gonna grab the people if there's anyone on Zoom.
If there's anybody on Zoom that has a question, please raise your hand. It doesn't appear there's any questions on Zoom.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Julie Webb. I live at 405 Miami River Drive. I just wanted a clarification of the reasoning why you're allowing multifamily or intensification of properties along Miami River. Right now, the bylaw says you've got to be 30 meters from the natural flow of the Miami River. Well, the natural flow flows right on to the back of our pathway. So if you take 100 feet, which is 30 meters from the natural flow, you cannot allow a secondary sweep. So I'm just I just want clarification as to the reasoning why you would allow that on Miami River.
Thank you. I don't think we have the staff here that are able to answer that question for you, unfortunately, at this time. But it's a good question.
Okay, the second,
Staff are aware of your question.
okay.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The other question I have is, so you say a 2%, up to a 2% increase for 50,000 per year, taxation 2%. What is 1% of your taxation? You're like $1.3 million or 1.5, you collect in municipal taxes. How is this 2%?
1% equates to about $25,000 worth of taxation from the village.
Okay.
So we get in a little over,
That just doesn't sound,
we,
you're only collecting, so when you put up taxes this year of 3%, you're going to collect, or 3.5%, you only collected $80,000 or $90,000?
I'll let the chief financial officer, but yes, it's my understanding.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wood. Through to the member of the public, Mayor Wood was correct in stating that approximately every additional 25,000 of tax requirement is about a 1% increase in your municipal taxes.
But you're not including new construction. So new construction gives you the added benefit of taxation of what you're increasing your taxes on. It's
Do you chief financial officer, if he wants to?
Thank you. There is definitely a growth aspect to it, which the more growth there is, the less is needed from current taxpayers, but that changes from year to year based on the amount of new constructions.
Thank you for your questions. Any further questions? So call for adjournment, moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Passio. Call the question, all in favor for adjournment? Opposed? Passes unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Can I just recognize Julie Webb as being one of our excellent village employees for many years in finance? Nice to see her here today. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.